now 1 p.m. and we'll call the meeting of the District Planning Regulation Committee to order. Apologies, I have no apologies apart from Councillor Blakey has to leave at 3:20, which is duly noted. And are there any conflicts of interest for this meeting? Appear to be none. Confirmation of minutes held on the 18th of August 2020. Do I have any a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Atkinson moves, Councillor Redmond seconds. Is there any discussion? I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Declare that carried. Is there any matters arising to the minutes? Appear to be none. We have no deputations today, so we'll bring our first report up. 6.1, Matt Bacon, for the plan change 45 Rangiora Airfield. Welcome to the table, Matt.
Thanks. Before I race up, it's just my pleasure to introduce everyone to Tim Johnson. So Tim Johnson's our new graduate planner that starts with us, or started with us 3 weeks ago now, so it's first committee. And so Tim effectively replaces Jen Russell, who is going on maternity leave. So for those that have seen her recently, you'll be very clear why. And so Tim joins us for that time and a little bit of time afterwards to cover us while we're going through the district plan review process. So Tim comes to us from, well, just recently graduated, but comes to us having done some work at Dunedin City Council and also at Inspire, which is a consultancy firm mainly based out of Tauranga, but they do a bit of work down here. And Tim's a local as well, which is another great thing. So he lives in Silverstream. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, if you'd like to come to the table for the report, welcome to Tim as our new staff member.
Excellent, thank you, Madam Chair. So I don't have too much to say on the report. I think it's pretty much taken as read. It's good that we've reached the process by which we can now make the provisions operative. It's taken slightly longer than we anticipated it would, but it's certainly got there and it is a good result. Have confirmed as well we aren't aware of any appeals having come through the Environment Court, given that they closed late last week as well. So happy to take the report as read and to answer any questions.
Are there any questions on the report? There appear to be none. Is anyone happy to move the report? Councillor Ward moves, Councillor Atkinson seconds. Councillor Ward.
Thank you. This is very good progress and very delighted to receive this designation to the Rangiora Airfield, and so hopefully we can progress in the future along lots of positive ways.
Councillor Atkinson. Any other speakers? Just quickly speaking to it as chair, thank you very much, Matt, and your team for the work on this. I know it's been quite a long process, but this is a highly significant asset in our district, and it's been recognised for its strategic importance in Canterbury. So this is the end of a long process, and looking forward to the fact that this becomes operative in November. Right, is there no further, or any right to reply, Councillor Ward? Fine, thank you. Thank you. Right, I'll put the report as it is in your order paper. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? I'll declare that carried. Thank you, Matt. Moving to 6.2, the proposed property bylaw, maintenance bylaw. Nick Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, Kay's kindly distributing a hard copy of the proper version of the bylaw. Councillor Redmond identified that the one which went out in the agenda was one generation ago, so my apologies for that, but the new version is there. I won't say much about the bylaw. We're all familiar with this committee. It's been here back in August, and the committee referred it back to the hearing committee, particularly about just being clear in the definition of long grass. And the hearing committee reconvened and came back with 20 centimetres as being the length, if you like, for long grass. The other matters that the hearing committee was asked to clarify were just to remove some words in section 3 of the bylaw around nuisance, and also in section 4.5 where it sought the removal of the words create a habitat suitable for vermin to live and breed. because those matters are actually dealt with by the Health Act in that way. There's also a subsequent or a consequential amendment to the bylaw just over in 7.1, which is actually the breach of the bylaw part. It's just the insertion of the word long in front of grass, just so that it more clearly defines or makes clear the matter being enforced, if you like. If the committee adopts the resolutions, it then goes to the council to adopt the bylaw, and then at some time after that, the council set a date for it to be operative. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there questions on the bylaw? Councillor Mealings.
It's not so much of a question, but is this the final draft, or will there be some more proofreading done of it? Because I can just see a wee spot that needs some attention.
Would you like to state which
In
spot
that
it is?
in that 7.1, it reads, in addition to the powers conferred on it by any other enactment, an authorized person may long grass or other vegetation may do what with it?
A person in this one, a person may arrange to have.
Yes, we need those words in there. Arrange to have.
They're in there. Yes.
Yes, thank you.
That's-
Thank you, Councillor Mealings. I noted some other words in there that needed
Yes.
change,
In there.
slight
No,
edits.
they are not there.
So
Oh, they are too. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Indeed.
No, it's no worries.
Forgive me.
It's actually.
I had picked it up on the other draft and went, oh, it's still crossed out. Okay,
Oh, look, it's confusing with this number of.
my bad.
great.
Additions and deletions.
Looks good to me.
So we'll leave Mr. Harrison to make that final amendment to the bylaw. Are there any other questions? I've just got one, Mr. Harrison, on section 6.1, the financial implications. In paragraph 4, you've stated it could be argued that the costs on balance of just mowing the sections are more acceptable than applying the weight of a bylaw to the issue. However, it's unknown how this issue will develop and that there could be more complaints. Have you received, in your experience to date, are the complaints increasing or decreasing for this issue?
We've only received a handful of complaints over the last couple of years to do with the bylaw. Complaints will be seasonal, so if we have a wet spring or an early wet summer, yes, you could expect to have some more complaints. And you could even expect to have some complaints near the end of summer if long grass is left to go to seed. But it's only a limited number of complaints we've actually received.
So is that statement actually saying that it's more costly to have a bylaw than to actually mow the property?
It might be a bit late for that argument in a way, because we've actually gone down this path.
No, I
of
mean the
fulfilling-
operational costs going forward.
Oh, no.
Sorry.
No.
To clarify.
No, it won't be. And the operational costs going forward, if we got the same number of complaints, a staff member would go out there, ascertain whether it's a breach of the bylaw or not, ask for it to be remedied. If it wasn't remedied, there is a cost recovery facility in the bylaw. So operational costs are likely to actually be less than not having a bylaw.
Right, thank you for that. Is someone prepared to move something for this? The Mayor's prepared to move. Councillor Redmond will second. The Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. But there's been quite a lot of we had a lot of discussion at our last meeting about this, but this eventuated because it came about from feedback from the community who were frustrated by the fact of long grass on sections, and there were a number of instances where this was happening, and effectively the council had no ability which to address it. So I did some homework, worked with our staff to identify where there are other instances in the country where this has occurred and how they'd handled it. The closest jurisdiction that we found was Auckland, and they came in place with a property maintenance and nuisance bylaw, I think they called it, up there. We then went about, we consulted with all the community boards and there was consultation with the community as well, and that's what's eventually brought back this. I'm actually pleased that because it had gone quite broad, and outside what was its original intention, which was to deal with grass and other vegetation. And that's exactly what is the matter to be dealt with here. It's a pity we need to look at matters like this. If owners would take care of their own sections and didn't create the associated nuisance, then we wouldn't need to be considering this. The law also, when the Parliament changed the rules and fens, the new law came about which brought about Fire Emergency New Zealand, it took away the ability of council to be able to consider such matters, and I think that was an unintended consequence to a degree, because as we found out, fens are actually not particularly interested unless it creates a direct fire risk. We do have a number of instances around where we do have situations that come up. Having a bylaw in place hopefully would act as a deterrent. Hopefully we wouldn't have to take that step, but if we do, we're armed with that ability in which to do that, and that was the whole reason for bringing this about. So confining it back to what its original purpose, I'm actually happy with and support.
Councillor Redmond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bylaw, as Mr Mayor has indicated, has had a long gestation period and has been simplified over its course. That went from an amenity bylaw to really effectively a long grass bylaw. I thought I'd just show you the length of grass you're allowed above my finger, 200 or what is it, 20 centimetres. I haven't been round to check your lawns. I think the main effect of this bylaw is going to be a deterrent effect. I think it's probably going to be very rarely used, and when it is used we may have to balance whether it would be cheaper to take remedial action ourselves or rely on the bylaw. The bylaw does enable us to recover reasonable costs from the landowner, but again I think it'll be rarely used, so it's on the books, and I think it'll be used with a touch of common sense. So I'm happy to second it. I think it's a step in the right direction. The amenity bylaw is something different. That could be something that may be looked at in the future. Thank you.
Are there any further speakers? Councillor Blackie.
When it went back to the subcommittee, Wendy and Sandra and myself, we had to figure out what was the definition of long grass, and we looked at each other for a while and said, well, it's about where it starts to clog your ride-on mower. And then someone said, well, how long's that? And we said, actually, it's that long. So that is the highly scientific way that we decided on the length of long grass. That is the definition of long grass, a name tag on end.
Any further speakers? Councillor Mealings.
Just looking at this, I am pleased to see that it has been pulled back to just talk about grass and specifically on undeveloped residential zone properties. And I do note that in 6.1, where it says it could be argued that the costs are on balance more acceptable than applying the weight of a bylaw to the issue, it is unknown how the issue will develop. If it becomes known that, oh yeah, just let it grow long and the council will just come and mow it for you and we have no way to recover that cost, then that could become a problem. So this actually nips that in the bud. It gives us the ability to recover any of those costs and actually keep the problem in check. So I'm quite happy with this final draft as it is now written, because it is specifically targeted at what it was originally meant to do. So I'm happy to support it.
Any further speakers? Just speaking to it myself, I'm very pleased with the revised version of it. I think it is taking it back to the original issue. I was really worried about the neighbour war issue. I've had a comment recently that a person mentioned that they were an essential worker working full-time and they had a person ring the council about their grass going onto the footpath, whereas they could have just come over and knocked on their door and talked to them. And I think it's important that council doesn't take over from civil issues, because that is not our mandate. However, I still can't accept that this bylaw is actually going to make any difference, which is why I will vote against it. I think it was good to investigate the issue, and it's really important that we go through those issues. And I know the panel worked exceptionally hard, But the fact that the panel was not unanimous showed that there was a great deal of contention in this issue. The fact that we've had to send it back for redefinition shows that it's very difficult to put into law. We've removed nuisance, we've removed vermin, we've now said over 20 centimetres of grass, which is an arbitrary figure. We've gone back to undeveloped residential zone sections. So this is not an all-encompassing bylaw, it's a very, very specific one. But council law, the laws that council can enact as a regulatory body are set by central government. And local government doesn't have the power to easily recoup costs, even with a bylaw. We rely on the court process for that. And as has been stated by Councillor Redmond, the cost of doing so can be highly prohibitive. So my concern is that there is already law, particularly in Pegasus where this issue started, covenants. It's civil law. And if a person is upset with a person breaching a civil covenant, they should take a civil case. It's not council's responsibility to do so. So I believe we're sending the wrong signal to the community. We're sending a signal that the council can fix anything. And I'm very worried about the effect on staff. Staff trying to go out and actually affect cost recovery on mowing a small handful of long grass sections in our district is going to be very, very difficult for them. So there is a cost and there is a nuisance issue to staff in the fact that they will become involved in an area that is not council's responsibility. It is a civil issue. The feedback from the community when this bylaw came through was actually about nuisance. It was about cars parked on sections. It was about containers. It was about fireworks. It was about noise. It wasn't necessarily just about long grass. And I still see long grass as a civil issue and not one that should require an entire bylaw to cover it. So I will not be voting for this recommendation going forward. Right of reply.
Thank you. I think it's been well stated by colleagues, and what actually brought this about was, unfortunately, a civil situation that was ensuing in a particular neighbourhood that was investing a lot of staff time, governance time as well, and there was effectively a little war going on at the very time. And so at the time I looked into this to see what was appropriate, what other steps could we take, and also I did consult with staff about the options of this. I feel comfortable with where we've got to. I feel comfortable that it's come back to and confined to its original intention, because that's where we got the original feedback from both residents, from Pegasus, particularly here in Rangiora. There were a number of instances. There's one going in Kaiapoi currently. And also from the feedback from our boards. It got broadened as we went out, and also when we asked staff what other things should we consider in there, and a whole raft of other things came in there. So in actual fact, confining it back to its intent, to its original intention, is the right thing to do. I hope that we don't have to go through a court process, and I hope that this acts as a suitable deterrent, and that people take care of their own sections. That would fix it all if people did take care of it. Unfortunately, there are instances where it doesn't, and people get pretty head up if you're in neighbourhoods around it. This is simply a tool for our staff to have in the toolbox if needed, and I'm hopeful that it would just be a deterrent. I don't really necessarily want to see us go down the court process and test that, because, as rightly observed by Councillor Barnett and Councillor Redmond, there's a cost involved in that. I think personally that to have this in the box as a tool, I think will be helpful to our staff, and hopefully it doesn't become an onerous burden for them.
Right, everyone has spoken. I'll put the motion as it is in your order paper. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Against. I declare that carried. I'd like my vote recorded, thank you. Moving on to 6.3. Thank you, Mr. Harrison, sorry. Moving on to 6.3, Heritage Biodiversity Ecological Fund allocations. Gina and Ian will be presenting today. Welcome to the table, and take your time, Gina. If you'd just like to turn the microphone on, that would be great. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Today I have put in a report under the Heritage, Biodiversity and Ecological Fund. I would just like to make a few comments in relation to the applications we have received. We have received 2 applications covering 3 projects. One of the projects was complete in 2017 by Sharon Leach, which is the painting of Broadhaven. She approached staff at the time in relation to receiving some help with funding. However, due to staffing, we weren't able to run a funding round for her. So she was recommended by staff to come when we did open the fund and do it retrospectively. Normally we don't do it retrospectively. Her second application is for re-roofing of the property, a lean-to and a garage. After speaking with staff, they have recommended that due to the funds, including the fact that the lean-to and garage are not considered heritage and not protected, that we offer to fund 50% of the works of just the house. And the third application came to me towards the end of last year. However, due to waiting for other applications to come in, a little bit of COVID and my injury, she's actually in June, she completed the painting herself, and the damage to the wood was actually less. So her quotes were $10,000 and $12,000 approximately, and it's actually come in at just over 5,000. So hers is retrospectively in the fact that we haven't been able to process it. Comments?
I'd just like to add to that. So both buildings are Category 2 heritage listed buildings. What they have in common to all is historical, architectural, group and setting significance. However, the Brooklands cottage at Rangiora Woodend Road has additional landmark and craftsmanship significance.
Take the report as read.
Thank you, Gina. Are there any questions for the panel? Councillor Redmond, followed by Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could you just clarify for me, what is the policy? Do we do 100% of the cost, or do we have a policy of 50%, which I saw referred to in the report?
Previously, we have done 50%. However, I brought it to you last year, and because of the funding that was available and the projects, we authorised up to 100%. I guess it's up to your discretion.
Just to follow up, we have a certain amount of funds in this account. When does that get topped up again?
We receive 15,500, and we receive it at the beginning of each financial year.
Councillor Stewart,
Isn't that?
does that answer your questions, Councillor Redmond? Thank you. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. Just a question on process. I was part of a hearing panel that considered several of these last year. Mm-hmm. Yes, and I just wonder what triggers a panel and what goes to staff? What's the process?
We decided on a panel last time because we hadn't done a funding round since 2008 and we had 16 applications. So it was agreed that having a funding panel to go through the 16 applications and spend that time dedicated to them would be time better spent than having it brought to DPNR for all 16 applications and merits and etc. to be discussed.
Is that that because you had more than one or two, you decided a panel?
Correct.
So how many? What's the policy? How many do we have before we trigger a panel? Because I'm quite interested in having the councillor input to
To the
these,
applications.
apart from just being brought to the committee.
I would say if we went over 5, we would probably request a panel, just for the, as I say, the time it takes to go through each application.
I think Matt may have some comments for us here. Thank you. Oh,
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Stewart. I thought just to add to Gina's answer and to give a little bit of context to the fund, we're currently looking at the option of splitting the fund from to be a separate heritage fund and a separate biodiversity and ecological fund. And in doing that, we will bring the option of doing that back to the committee, or to 2 committees actually, because it's also going to go to the Land and Water Committee. And that will look at also the criteria for funding. So we'll bring forward some options, and that might be workshopped around what criteria we want to see for funding. And that question can be part of the conversation as well. The other thing will be some options around funding that. So myself and Grant McLeod are looking at the funding options there, and we'll bring those back as well. In terms of the funding around it, it's being done as part of the LTP process, so very shortly is the answer. We need to meet and discuss that. In terms of the options around splitting the fund and how that works, we haven't programmed that in yet, but it's likely to be sort of start of next year, I'd imagine.
question from me. So is it fair to say that the report that's been brought to us today, looking through it, has been applications that were delayed through the COVID-19 emergency and has made it difficult to have meetings with the panel or the chair of DPNR to discuss these issues?
I was really lucky that she was able to bring it through to get the funding through.
So in essence, what you're recommending to us today is a tidy up of the 2020 year, and are there any other outstanding applications in the 2020 year at this point?
No, I'm not aware of any at the moment.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Redmond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The application for retrospective repainting of the exterior, that painting was carried out in 2017. I realise there have been delays with COVID and other matters, but what explains the rest of the delay of 2 years?
Sharon Leach approached the planning department in relation to the contestable fund, as it was called, back before she completed the painting. However, due to staff resourcing, they weren't actually able to hold a funding round for her, as it was done every 3 years. So when she spoke to staff, they advised if she painted it, and we would look at the application retrospectively, because there wasn't any funding. We weren't able to do a funding round for her at that time.
Councillor Mealing.
Would it be fair to say that this is an absolute exception to the rule, because in the guidelines it says that the fund isn't available to compensate for work already done?
Correct.
I'm not leaning that way, by the way. I was just thinking that with this, should we go ahead with this, that I think it needs to be noted that this particular one is quite an exception, so as not to open floodgates for other people to come in with retrospective things, when we very clearly said that the fund is not available.
We'll let we'll let Mr. Bacon reply to that question. Thank you. No, sorry. Oh, again.
Just for further context on that one, yes. So the resourcing of the fund has sat sort of rather uncomfortably between a number of teams for a number of years. But just in terms of this particular application, the applicant actually was talking to us before we made a decision around retrospective funding. And at the time, we were still debating whether or not we would hold it at retrospective funding or not. So on the basis that they'd already spoken to us before the committee had made a decision to move to retrospective funding, we had said, look, it's reasonable for us to consider it as it was at the time.
And Gina, just to clarify, you mentioned about the lean-to and the garage on one application not being part of the heritage assessment. Can you just clarify the figures that you've got in the recommendation in the report for us as to what you're asking for today?
So Sharon brought to us two quotes, however they're not identical. The first one was for just over 24,000, and that was for the replacement of the garage, lean-to and the house. The second application was for the lean-to garage house, but it included scaffolding that they needed done. So bearing in mind how much we have available in the fund, after discussions, the staff recommended that the funding would be 50% of just the garage roof replacement, which would be half of the 24,736.50. And again, it is, we would love to fund more, but we just need to be mindful of the balance in any future projects that we may have coming up.
Councillor Atkinson?
Clarify further, the lean-to and the garage are not part of the historic, yet we are funding to fix something that's not part of the historic.
No,
50%
so
of the
she's
fund.
applied for the house, the garage and the lean-to. We're recommending 50% of just the house,
Okay,
so not the
that's
garage
fine.
or
That's
lean-to.
okay. I just wanted
I wasn't quite
clarification.
clear then either. Thank you. Mr Mayor.
So that's contained in the recommendation of C. Effectively, those numbers there equate to that recommendation. Just remind me that that is the case.
Yes, correct.
Thank you. That's what I thought it was.
Are there any other questions? I'm happy to test the meeting and move the recommendation as it's stated in 6.3. Do I have a seconder? Mr Mayor. Just speaking to the report, there's obviously, it's been difficult to follow total process this year. There's been quite a change in the way we meet and the way we progress, and it's obvious that this fund still needs some further work, as has been indicated by Mr Bacon. So it looks like we will be receiving a further report to tidy up and clarify what this fund is going forward. But at this point, we've had some people in good faith who have actually performed restoration of heritage buildings, which are very important in our district. And we do have funds available which are sitting in the fund to be spent. And I trust the staff recommendations to have identified the areas that are covered by the heritage designation. So I'm happy to approve this report for the $31,036.11 as of today, to try and tidy up the issues that we've had over the past few years in this area. And hopefully from here we will receive further direction which can then go to the panel which has been set up of elected members to actually have a broader discussion when these applications come in. So I want to thank the staff for getting us through this period and for bringing this report to us, and hopefully we can see the benefit of this heritage work being done in our district. Thank you. Mr Mayor.
Support your comments, Madam Chair. Just like to thank Gina and Ian for the work that's gone in to this report. I think it is very clear, and I appreciate the further clarifications that have come from colleagues, and they are reasonable sums of money, but this is exactly what this fund was set up for. Having a further workshop or discussion or further report would be helpful. I think the more we can clarify, the better, because we've been on that journey for a number of years, and in fact, as was mentioned, the application that was put in the work that's happened in 2017, it was the view of the committee at the time that we set the fund aside and apply it every 3 years, so there could be a meaningful amount of money there to apply from, and we could look at measures at that time, not accepting the fact that property owners do need to get on and do their maintenance. They don't want to see their properties deteriorate from painting, so their timeframes aren't necessarily going to work with ours. So on that basis, I'm happy to accept the retrospective application, because that's been our process, and then and individuals being able to comply with it. So no, I'm fully in support of the applications that are there, and support the recommendation.
Further speakers? There's nothing to reply to, so I'll put the recommendation as it stands in your order paper. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? I'll declare that carried. Thank you very much for your report. Moving on to portfolio updates. First is district planning and development. Just very quickly from myself, we've had another meeting with the district plan team to further refine the work that's going to be done in the briefings for November and December. We have asked that there's significant pre-reading available to members, so that the committee will have a chance to look over the information before coming to the briefing, and then can devise any questions. We are going to have to keep this very much to time, so if there are significant issues, we do have a reserve day at the end of the time on the 4th of December, and so the faster we move through the issues, the less time we would have to spend on that 4th of December for some of those individual issues. But you are also welcome, if you see anything in the information, to talk to the staff member concerned whose area it represents if you have a specific issue that needs tidying. Councillor Mealings, do you have anything to add?
Not really much to add to that, but just to point out that yes, so that Friday is there in reserve for time off for good behavior, if you will. So if we manage to actually get through all the case matter, then great. And there will be just one page, am I correct here? One page reading per
There'll be a summary
yeah,
of what we're covering on the
a summary,
day.
and then if you want to
Yes.
delve into any issues yourselves, then there will be information for you to go and do that. So we're not talking thousands of pages of reading, but certainly to come prepared, because there are a lot of things to get through. But no, other than that, have really nothing to add. Let's get this thing done.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Mealings. Councillor Redmond, Regulation and Civil Defence.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll refer to 4 areas. The first one is planning. We've discussed the airfield plan change at today's meeting, so I won't comment further on that. The Ravenswood plan change is in process to be notified around the end of the month. This plan change seeks to rezone about 13 hectares of land to Business 1 when it was originally zoned residential 6A and some of it Business 1 zones. And the council at its October meeting directed staff to notify the application. The Somerset plan change, the Clark property, that decision came out, I think it was the end of last week, and the appeal period will close on the 1st of December. The decision grants a rezone of almost 14 hectares from residential 4B to residential 2. A major part of this is to build a retirement village in part of the rezoned land. And if there are no appeals, the next step is to report back to this committee to adopt the change and set an operative date. The 4th area in the planning area, the Taggart Racecourse Quarry application. The applicant's now requested that it be notified. There is still some outstanding further information to be provided so that when the application is notified, people can understand it. This is a joint matter with ECAN, who will hear submissions for the discharge consent application. Civil Defence. The CDEM has been running emergency operations centre courses for staff and assisting the Huranui District Council with a full day Emergency Operations Centre annual exercise, and training of volunteers after hours has continued. And you may have noticed in the management team reports, I think Chris Field was commended for work he's been doing in that area, along with Brennan. Building, and I've mentioned this previously, we're waiting on an MBIE determination on eco cottages. It's been with them for a long time. Eco cottages sought for a determination that their cottages were not buildings, rather a collection of building elements, and therefore no consent was required. Sort of a novel argument. There's no word on when that determination will be published, but it has been a number of months. And just a general comment on building activity, it's actually about the same as last year, and the building team is still doing some work for Selwyn and Ashburton councils, which is helping to balance the workload and staff retention. The Environmental Services Unit, dogs. The team is following up those who have not registered their dogs, and that number's come down to 254 dogs out of a population of 12,686 dogs. It's amazing what statistics we can find. Reasons for not registering are often that the owner has left the district or the dog has died. If the dog is still in the district, then an infringement fee of $300 can be issued. And the last area is alcohol hearings. The Wood End Bottle Shop, where a pizza takeaway is proposed to be changed to a bottle store, and also Big Daddy's in Rangiora are still are yet to be set down for a hearing. The government's extended its COVID order that pushed out reporting times for the tri-agencies, the Ministry of Health and Police, to December. So this means the hearings can't be set until the reports are available, and they have longer within which to provide those reports. So it's unlikely those hearings will now be this year, but that's outside our control. So that's just a roundup from regulation and civil defence. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Redmond. Are there any questions on that report? There appear to be none. Very comprehensive. Thank you very much. Councillor Ward, Business Promotion in Town Centres.
Thank you. The business promotions, Rangiora have held a very successful pop-up meeting at the RSA, which was very well received. They've been very, very busy planning and getting underway with the Christmas parade, a possible Santa in Conway Lane. They're looking at that, and perhaps additional floats for the Rangiora parade. Also applying and having received some grants for the Santa Parade, 7,306 from CERT, and having received more funding for fireworks night down here, $9,381 from Southern Trust. And they've received for celebration night, which is also happening in Rangiora, $4,065 for traffic management from CERT. And for the celebration night, they've received funding from Rata Foundation for $7,000. So I guess what we can say to that is that the Rangiora Promotions has been extremely active in gaining funding for these additional funding to hold these really great strategic events for our district. As far as the town centres, we've been doing a lot of work in that field with workshops and looking at, of course, lighting in the town centres, and the painting and upgrading and skilling of the Kaipoi Bridge is of foremost to get that sorted and decided on before lighting is planned for the Kaipoi area. Also, we've been having workshops for the Kaipoi South Business area. We've received 5 proposals to have what's going to happen in that area with and of course they were quite exciting proposals and very extensive from developers, which is very helpful for now. and we've got it down to 2 proposals, but are now waiting for further consultation and analysis. So that's very, very exciting. So lots of wonderful things happening in Whakaipua too. So it's, yeah, very busy. So it's been good.
You have a question, Councillor Atkinson?
My question is around the painting of the bridge. It's my understanding that Kaipua Community Board's waiting on a report on whether the painting money will end up in a balustrade replacement or whatever that may be to come back. I'm interested to see why we're looking at lighting and painting the bridge when that's coming back to the Community Board to be decided on whatever, yet there appears to be discussions on painting it.
Well, we have had, it is in the pipeline. We've had meetings on it and have been in workshops. So maybe that,
Perhaps Councillor Ward and Councillor Atkinson could have a chat outside the meeting and discuss what's coming through from both areas to see if we can find a middle ground.
We have assigned a lighting person to help us.
Mr Mayor.
Just to say, in support of Councillor Atkinson, that was my understanding too. We had a meeting with Simon Hart end of last year on that very topic, so just might pay to follow up with Simon about that, Joan. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Great. Any further questions? There appear to be none. I have no questions. I have no urgent general business, so I will close the meeting as at 1:47. Thank you for your attendance. Right, we'll now move into briefing managers update. If anyone wants, if Nick wants to direct this one, I'll let you direct the traffic.
Right, so